I am not trying to take the magic out of the world. I am trying to protect it. Because the cheap magic, the blurry photographs, the stories that shift like dreams, the lights that are never quite in focus, it crowds out the real magic. And the real magic is sitting right in front of you, in a glass of wine. Now that probably sounds crazy. A glass of wine is more magical than visitors from another star system. More magical than spacecraft that defy the laws of physics? Yes, and I can prove it. But first, let me tell you what happens when people show me their flying saucer photographs. I ask one question, just one, and it makes them very angry. I ask, which is more likely? That a civilization from a distant star system crossed impossible distances, found our tiny blue speck, traveled all this way, and then decided to fly around in circles and scare a farmer in Arkansas before leaving without saying hello? Or that your brain, this beautiful, paranoid, pattern-seeking machine that kept your ancestors alive on the African savanna, simply made a mistake? I think it is much more likely that the reports of flying saucers are the results of the known irrational characteristics of terrestrial intelligence than of the unknown rational efforts of extraterrestrial intelligence. That is the equation. And once you see it, everything changes. Let me show you the difference between cheap magic and real magic. Let me start with your eyes. Stu, your eyes are part of a very messy, very wet, very complicated machine called the brain. And this machine has a job. Its job is not to find the truth. Its job is to make sense of the chaos. It grabs patches of light, scraps of movement, fragments of shadow, and stitches them into a story. Oh, that is a bird. That is a plane. That is a flying saucer. Here is how powerful this story machine is. Show a person random dots on a screen. Completely random, no pattern at all. Within seconds, the brain finds triangles, faces, bears, hunters, flying saucers. It cannot stop. It is compulsive. Your brain would rather invent a pattern that does not exist than sit with the discomfort of randomness. We have a name for this. Pareidolia, the tendency to see meaningful images in random noise. Remember the face on Mars? In 1976, the Viking orbiter took a photograph of a Martian mesa. In low resolution, it looked exactly like a human face staring up from the surface. People went wild. Headlines everywhere. Evidence of an ancient Martian civilization. Then, in 2001, the Mars Global Surveyor went back with a camera 20 times sharper. And the face? Gone. It was just a hill. An ordinary rocky hill with shadows. But here is the thing. Some people still believed it was a face, even with the better photograph. Because the brain does not want to give up its story. The story feels real. The story feels important. Letting go of it feels like losing something. Jesus on toast. The rabbit on the moon. A face in the clouds. Your brain does this constantly. Not because you are stupid, because you are human. Because the machine was built to find patterns, even when there are none. So when someone tells me they saw a flying saucer, I do not doubt their sincerity. I doubt their instrument. The instrument is the brain, and the brain is not a camera. It is a storyteller. And storytellers have a terrible habit. They never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Now, hold on. Before you get angry and turn this off, because some of you are getting angry right now, let me say something important. This is not just about flying saucers. This is about everything. This is about how we discovered the laws of the universe by learning to distrust our own eyes. Look at the ground beneath your feet. It looks flat, doesn't it? You walk in a straight line. You don't feel like you're walking around a ball. For thousands of years, people trusted that feeling. It looks flat, so it must be flat. And it took a massive leap of imagination to say, maybe my eyes are lying to me. Maybe the world is actually a giant sphere spinning in the void. That was hard. That was deeply uncomfortable. Because the ground looks flat. Your senses insist it is flat. And yet, it is not. Now look at the sky. Every morning you see the sun come up in the east, move across the sky, and go down in the west. It looks like the sun is moving. It feels like we are standing still. For thousands of years, common sense said Earth was the center. The sun orbits us. The stars revolve around us. We are the middle of everything. It took Copernicus and Galileo to say, wait a minute, what if what we see is relative? What if we are the ones moving? And when Galileo built his telescope and showed people the evidence, the moons of Jupiter, the phases of Venus, do you know what happened? Church leaders refused to look through the telescope. Think about that. The instrument was right there. The evidence was one eyepiece away. And they said no. They preferred the story their eyes told them over the instrument that could show them truth. That should sound familiar. Because it is exactly what happens with the flying saucer discussion. People trust what they saw over what the instruments measure. They trust the story over the data. Do you see the pattern? Every time we make a big discovery, every time we take a genuine leap forward, it is because we stop trusting the obvious picture. We stop trusting what our eyes tell us. We stop trusting common sense. The earth looks flat. It is round. The sun looks like it moves. We move. Objects look solid. They are mostly empty space. Time looks constant. It bends and stretches. Every major breakthrough in physics is a betrayal of common sense. And if common sense has been wrong about the shape of the earth, the motion of the sun, the solidity of matter, and the flow of time, maybe it is also wrong about those lights in the sky. Now let's talk about how nature really works. Down at the bottom, down in the atoms. Because if you think flying saucers are weird, wait until you hear about electrons. When we started looking at matter, really looking at it, we found things that make no sense to the human mind. We found that the tiniest pieces of reality do not behave like little balls. They do not behave like anything you have ever seen. Let's take light. You turn on a lamp and the room fills up. It looks continuous, like water filling a bathtub. Smooth, even. But if you look closely enough, and I mean really closely, you find that light comes in little packets, tiny raindrops of energy. We call them photons. Now here is where it gets strange. Imagine I shoot a single photon at a wall with two small holes in it. Just one photon, one tiny packet of light. You would expect it to go through one hole or the other. That is common sense. If I throw a baseball at a wall with two windows, it goes through the left window or the right window. It does not go through both. Baseballs do not do that. But light is different. If we do not look at it, if we do not put a detector there to check which hole it went through, the photon behaves as if it went through both holes at the same time. Both, simultaneously. It creates a pattern on the wall that could only happen if it was in two places at once. An interference pattern. Waves meeting waves. Peaks canceling valleys. A fingerprint of something passing through both openings. Now think about that. A single particle. One photon. and it interferes with itself, as if it took both paths and met itself on the other side. This should break your brain a little, because it broke ours. But here is the part that really keeps physicists up at night. The moment we put a detector at one of the holes, the moment we try to watch which path the photon takes, the interference pattern vanishes, gone, completely. The photon picks one hole. It acts like a regular little bullet. It behaves like a normal, sensible particle, as if it knew we were watching. Let that sink in. When you do not look, the photon is a wave. It explores every possibility at once. When you do look, it collapses into a single point. It makes a choice. The act of measuring something changes the outcome. Observation is not passive. Observation is an event. It reaches into the experiment and reshapes reality. I used to say, nature is shy. She does not like to show us her tricks while we are watching, and this tells us something profound about the universe. Reality, even at the deepest level, is not like a photograph you can stare at. It is more like a conversation. You ask a question, and the universe answers. But the answer depends on how you ask. Now think about what this means for the flying saucers. If nature herself, at the level of atoms, behaves differently depending on whether you are watching, then how much can you trust what you think you saw in the sky at 2 a.m. after 3 cups of coffee? The real universe is stranger, more slippery, and more magnificent than any flying saucer story, and it does not care about your expectations. So when we go back to the people who say, "But I saw it, I know what I saw," I believe them. I am not calling them liars. I am calling them human. We have a very specific way of fooling ourselves. It is called confirmation bias, and it is a powerful force. Here is how it works. If you already believe there are visitors from another star system, then every light in the sky becomes a spaceship. Every radar glitch becomes proof. Every blurry photograph becomes a breakthrough. If you believe in ghosts, every creak in the floorboards becomes a spirit. Every cold draft becomes a presence. You do not go out looking for evidence that you are wrong. You go out collecting evidence that you are right. And the world is very generous with that kind of evidence. You can always find what you are looking for if you are not careful about how you look. Now, there is a wonderful story about a rat in a maze. We scientists love rats. A researcher puts a rat in a maze. The rat has to find the door to get the food. The door is on the right. The rat learns this very quickly. Run down the corridor, turn right, get the cheese, easy. Then the researcher changes the maze. He puts the door on the left. The rat runs down, turns right, and bonk, hits the wall, no cheese. Does the rat sit there and write a dissertation on why the cheese should be on the right? Does it form a committee? Does it start a podcast? No. The rat tries again, turns right, bonk, tries again, turns right, bonk. Eventually, after enough bonks, the rat figures it out and goes left. But humans are sometimes not as smart as rats, because we have something the rat does not. Imagination. If a human turns right and hits the wall, we do not just try again. We invent a reason why the cheese should still be there. Oh, the cheese is there, but it is invisible today. The cheese has moved to a higher dimension. The government is hiding the cheese. Big Dairy does not want you to find the cheese. We construct elaborate, beautiful, sophisticated theories to protect our initial belief. We build entire cathedrals of logic on a foundation of, "I turned right once. and there was cheese. We do not want to admit that we were wrong. We do not want to admit that we just hit a wall. And that refusal to accept the bonk, is what separates bad science from good science. Good science says, I hit the wall. The cheese is not here. Let me try another direction. Bad science says, I hit the wall. The wall is wrong. This is what I call cargo cult science. Let me tell you what I mean by that. During the Second World War, American planes landed on islands in the South Pacific. Tiny islands. Places where people had never seen an airplane before. The planes brought cargo, food, medicine, tools, incredible things falling from the sky. Then the war ended. The planes stopped coming. And do you know what happened? The islanders built runways out of bamboo. They carved headphones out of wood. They sat in control towers made of straw and waved landing signals into empty air. They did everything right. The form was perfect. The runway looked like a runway. The tower looked like a tower. The signals looked like signals. But no planes came. Because they had copied the appearance of an airport without understanding the substance. They had the ritual without the reality. This is cargo cult science. It is research that follows all the forms of scientific investigation. The papers look right. The language sounds right. The graphs are beautiful. But it is missing the one essential thing: honesty. Not honesty toward other people. That is easy. I mean honesty toward yourself. The discipline to say, maybe I am wrong. Maybe my beautiful theory does not fit the data. Maybe I need to report the things that did not work, not just the things that did. And the flying saucer business? It is the perfect example of cargo cult science. It has the appearance of investigation. People collect reports. They analyze photographs. They build databases of sightings. They use scientific language. But they skip the hardest part. They never seriously ask, what if we are fooling ourselves? Now, you might think this is just about UFO enthusiasts in their basements. But it is not. I have seen this in the best institutions. Let me tell you two stories. In 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after launch. 7 people died. I was asked to join the investigation commission. And what did I find? The engineers at Morton Thiokol knew the rubber O-ring seals became brittle in cold weather. They had data. They had warnings. The night before launch, temperatures dropped to 36 degrees Fahrenheit, well below the safety threshold. The engineers said, do not launch. Management overruled them. They launched anyway. That is cargo cult thinking at the highest level. The form of safety review was followed. Meetings were held. Documents were signed. But the substance, actually listening to the data, was ignored. I demonstrated this at the hearing. I took a piece of the O-ring rubber, dropped it into a glass of ice water, and squeezed it with a clamp. It did not bounce back. It stayed flat, rigid, dead. Sometimes the truth is that simple, and that uncomfortable. Years earlier, at Los Alamos during the Manhattan Project, I discovered I could crack the safes where they kept the atomic bomb secrets. Not because I was a genius locksmith, because the physicists used predictable combinations, mathematical constants, birthdays, the number pi. The form of security was perfect. Duke's heavy safes, classified labels, armed guards. The substance? The combination was 271828, the first digits of the number E cargo cult security. It looked safe, but nobody checked whether it actually was safe. This is the pattern, over and over. in UFO research, in shuttle launches, in nuclear security. People follow the form, they skip the substance, and that is not science. That is a bamboo runway. Now I want to show you something that will put all of this in perspective, something about the size of what we are talking about. When people talk about visitors from another star system, they use the word far very casually. Oh, they came from far away. I do not think people understand what far means. Let me show you. Imagine the sun is a pumpkin. A regular pumpkin, sitting on your kitchen table, about 30 centimeters across, 1 foot. At this scale, how big is Earth? A pea. A tiny green pea, about 2.6 millimeters across, sitting 32 meters away from the pumpkin. That is roughly 105 feet. About a third of a football field, your entire world. Everything you have ever known. Every person who ever lived. Every war, every love story, every civilization. All on a pea. A third of a football field from a pumpkin. Now. Where is the nearest star? The nearest star to our sun is Proxima Centauri, 4.24 light-years away. At our pumpkin scale, that star is in Hawaii. Your pumpkin is in New York. The nearest star is a slightly smaller pumpkin sitting on a beach in Honolulu, 8,800 kilometers away. And between them, nothing. Empty space. No gas stations, no rest stops, no landmarks, just void. And that is the nearest star. Most stars in our galaxy are thousands of times farther. So when someone says aliens flew here from another star system, they are saying a civilization crossed from Hawaii to New York to visit a pea. A pea that is mostly water, covered in creatures who have only had radio for about 130 years. Now I am not saying it is impossible. I never say impossible. Physics does not deal in impossibilities. It deals in probabilities. But the scale should make you humble. And here is what makes the scale even more astonishing. That pea, your Earth, is made of the same stuff as the pumpkin. The same atoms, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron. Every atom in your body was forged inside a star that exploded billions of years ago. You are star stuff. And that is the real magic. Not blurry lights in the sky. Not grainy photographs of things that might be balloons. The real magic is that the universe made atoms, and those atoms made molecules. And those molecules, after billions of years, arranged themselves into something that can wonder about where it came from. That is extraordinary. That is worth protecting from cheap magic. But if we are really made of star stuff, if the chemistry of life is written in the periodic table, then why do we behave so strangely? If these beings have solved the problem of interstellar travel, if they have crossed from Hawaii to New York at our pumpkin scale, then why do they behave like amateurs? Think about it. You travel light years through the hazards of space. You avoid black holes, radiation, debris. You solve the energy problem that our entire civilization has not even begun to crack. And then you crash. In a desert, in New Mexico. That seems like a very bad driver. Why do they kidnap people and perform medical examinations? We have MRI machines. We can look inside a human body without making a single cut. You would think a civilization 1,000,000 years ahead of us would have better medical technology than a 19th century surgeon with a bone saw. The behavior does not fit the capability. That is the problem. Nature has a style. There is a consistency to it. How gravity works the same way in a galaxy 1,000,000,000 light years away as it does in your living room. Light behaves the same way in the heart of a star as it does in your flashlight. There is a rhythm, a logic. The UFO stories lack this logic. They feel like, well, they feel like human stories. They feel like dreams. In dreams, things shift. Logic breaks. You are in your house, but it is not your house. You are talking to your mother, but she is also your boss. The flying saucer reports have this dreamlike quality. The physics are slippery. The motives are murky. And that is why I bet on the terrestrial hallucination theory. Because I know the human mind is a dream factory. Now, I can hear you thinking. But what about the Pentagon? What about those military videos? Those are not farmers in Arkansas. Those are trained pilots with infrared cameras and multi-million-dollar sensor systems. Fair point. Let's apply the equation. A trained pilot reports an object moving in ways that defy known physics. So which is more likely? That an alien spacecraft entered our airspace, performed maneuvers that violate thermodynamics, and then vanished? Or that an infrared camera on a moving jet, combined with atmospheric conditions and parallax effects, created an optical artifact that a pilot, a human pilot with a pattern-seeking brain, interpreted as extraordinary? Remember, these pilots are excellent at flying. That does not make them excellent at interpreting ambiguous sensor data. The instruments have their own version of pareidolia. They show you something, and your brain fills in the story. And here is the cargo cult test. Do these investigations try to prove themselves wrong? Do they publish the cases where the explanation turned out to be mundane? A weather balloon, a bird, a camera glitch? Or do they only show you the ones that remain mysterious? If you only count the unexplained cases and throw away the explained ones, you are not doing science. You are building a bamboo runway. So, we have a dream factory in our skulls. We have a universe of impossible distances. We have behavior that does not match capability. And we have investigations that skip the hardest question. That brings us to the deepest part of the equation. The part most people do not want to hear. We are pattern-seeking animals. We survived on the African savanna, not because we were the fastest or the strongest, but because we were the most paranoid. Imagine you are walking through tall grass. You hear a rustle. Two possibilities. Possibility 1, it is the wind. Possibility 2, it is a lion. The ancestor who thought probably just the wind got eaten. The ancestor who thought lion and ran survived. We are the descendants of the runners, the paranoid ones, the ones who saw patterns, who saw agency, who saw intent in the chaos, even when there was none. That instinct kept us alive for 100,000 years, but it makes terrible scientists, because now, instead of rustling grass, we have lights in the sky, and instead of lions, we see spacecraft, and instead of running, we build elaborate theories about interstellar visitors. We want to see someone looking back at us. We do not want to be alone in the dark. We want the universe to care about us. It is a beautiful desire. It is a profoundly human desire, but it is not evidence. Sight is not proof. Feeling is not data. Wanting something to be true does not make it true. We learned this in physics a long time ago. We cannot trust our eyes. We have to build instruments. We have to build mathematics. We have to build rigorous methods to filter out the bias, to filter out the wishful thinking. We have to be willing to accept answers that we do not like. Maybe the answer is that we are effectively alone. Maybe the distances are too vast to ever cross. Maybe civilizations rise and fall before they can say hello. That is a sad thought. But it might be the true thought. And I would rather have a hard truth than a comforting fantasy, because the truth has its own beauty. But let me be clear about something. I am not saying it is impossible. I am saying, show me. So what would convince me? What evidence would make a physicist put down his wine glass and say, yes, that is real? I will tell you exactly. Give me a signal, not a blurry light, not a story that changes with each telling. Give me a signal that contains information that could not have come from Earth. A mathematical sequence we have not discovered. A piece of technology that operates on principles we cannot explain. Something I can put on a table and test. Something that gives the same result on Tuesday as it does on Thursday. Something that works when a skeptic is watching, not just when a believer is watching. We did this with gravitational waves. Einstein predicted them in 1915. We detected them in 2015. 100 years of patience. 100 years of building better instruments, reducing noise, questioning every signal. That is what real discovery looks like. Not a blurry photograph, a century of rigorous work. And if alien life is out there, and I suspect it is, then it deserves that level of respect. It deserves real science, not bamboo runways. So keep looking. Keep building better instruments. Keep asking harder questions. But while you are waiting for that signal from across the universe, let me show you something extraordinary that is already right here. In a glass of wine. A glass of wine. Hold it up to the light. Look at it. Really look at it. You see a dark liquid. Maybe red, maybe gold, swirling gently in the glass. But what is it really? It is sunlight. Captured. A vine grew on a hillside in France, or California, or Argentina. Its leaves spread out and caught photons, packets of light that traveled 93 million miles from the surface of the sun in 8 minutes. Those photons carried energy, and the vine used that energy to rearrange carbon dioxide and water into sugar. Glucose, stored sunlight. Then yeast, tiny single-celled organisms, each one a biological machine more sophisticated than anything we have ever built, ate that sugar. And as they ate it, they produced alcohol and carbon dioxide. Fermentation. A process that has been happening on Earth for billions of years, long before humans existed to appreciate it. Now look deeper. The water in that glass fell as rain. It evaporated from an ocean thousands of miles away, rose into the atmosphere, formed a cloud, drifted on wind patterns driven by the rotation of the Earth and the uneven heating of the sun, and the minerals, the potassium, the calcium, the iron. Where did those come from? A star. Not our star. A star that died billions of years before our sun was born. A massive star that burned through its fuel, collapsed, and exploded in a supernova so violent that it forged heavy elements in its death throes. Those atoms, scattered across space, eventually found their way into a cloud of gas that collapsed to form our solar system. Our planet. That hillside. That vine. That grape. That glass of wine is 4.6 billion years of cosmic history. In your hand. And here's the part that gets me. Every time. The atoms in that wine are not special. They are the same atoms that make up rocks and rivers and the air you breathe. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. But arranged in this particular way, in the molecules of the wine, in the cells of your tongue, in the neurons of your brain. They create something extraordinary. Taste. Think about what that means. The universe arranged atoms in such a way that atoms can taste other atoms, since matter can experience itself. The cosmos invented pleasure, and it goes deeper still. Those same atoms in your brain, arranged in the right pattern, can wonder about where they came from. They can ask, where did this wine come from? Where did these atoms originate? What is this? The universe is looking at itself, through your eyes, and wondering. That is the real magic. Not blurry lights in the sky. Not grainy photographs of objects that might be weather balloons. Not stories that shift like dreams. The real magic is that you exist. That you can hold a glass and taste the death of a star. That atoms can arrange themselves into something that asks questions about atoms. And I am not trying to take the magic out of the world. I am trying to show you where the real magic is. It is right here, in your hand, in your eyes. In the fact that you are watching this right now, atoms contemplating atoms, wondering about the universe that made them, and that understanding is worth more than 1,000 flying saucers. So let me tell you where we have arrived. We started with a simple question. People see lights in the sky. Are they visitors from another world? And we built an equation, not with numbers, with probabilities. On one side, a civilization that crossed from Hawaii to New York at pumpkin scale to visit a pea. That solved energy problems we cannot imagine. That navigated the void between stars, and then crashed in a desert, kidnapped farmers, and flew away without saying hello. On the other side, a brain, a messy, wet, complicated machine, built by evolution on the African savanna, designed not to find truth, but to find lions. A machine that sees faces on Mars, patterns in randomness, and spacecraft in clouds. The descendants of the paranoid, still running from shadows, still building bamboo runways, copying the form of investigation without the substance of honesty. And the most easily fooled person in the whole universe? Yourself. That is the equation. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But here is what I want you to take away from this. I am not telling you to stop looking up. I am telling you to look up with better eyes. Because the universe does not owe you flying saucers, but it has given you something far more extraordinary. It has given you a glass of wine that contains the death of a star, atoms that can taste other atoms, a cosmos that invented pleasure and wonder and the ability to ask, why? You are atoms contemplating atoms, and that is not a consolation prize. That is the prize. Real magic does not hide in blurry photographs. Real magic sits on your kitchen table, in your glass, in your breath, in the fact that you exist at all. Protect it from the cheap magic, from the bamboo runways, from the comfortable lies. Demand real answers. Build real instruments. Do real science. And if you want to keep exploring what real magic looks like, how the universe actually works, at its deepest, strangest, most beautiful level, subscribe. Hit the bell. Because we are just getting started. And if this video changed the way you see a glass of wine, or a light in the sky, leave a comment. Tell me what you think the equation says. I will see you in the next one. Keep wondering, keep doubting, keep looking with better eyes.